This is episode 1158.
I think that as teams mature, and I don't know if this is unique to myself, 22 through 25, but I think as teams mature and as leaders mature within a specific company, you start unwrapping more and more opportunities and more cross-functional projects. You initially knock out all the things that are directly in your control to fix in the first year. It's the low-hanging fruit. You go fast. They're the easiest problems to solve. And as you've been around for a while, you start uncovering those more difficult problems, those problems that can't be solved by one or two teams, those problems that require multiple teams working together, willing to change some processes for a greater good for the overall company. And so I find a lot more of my time now focused on those really hard, complicated problems as opposed to the low-hanging fruit.
3 years ago, speed was the advantage. Fix what's broken, scale what works, and just keep the momentum moving forward. But somewhere along the way, every CFO hits a different kind of test. The moment when the easy wins are gone, and the judgment matters more than velocity. That's why today's conversation matters. We're talking about what changes when companies mature. When finance stops being a cleanup function and becomes the integrator. And when technology, especially AI, forces leaders to decide not just what's possible, but what's acceptable. This episode isn't about hype. Instead, our talk with CFO Razzak Jallow is about discipline, pride in the work, and the hard choices that define today's finance leadership. We begin after this. Hello, CFO Razzak Jallow is with us. Razzak returns to CFO thought leader 3 years after our first conversation when FloQast was scaling fast, expanding globally, and broadening its product set beyond the close. Before FloQast, his finance journey ran through Adobe during its subscription shift, Apple in sales finance, and Looker through its acquisition and integration into Google. Today, we'll revisit what changed since 2022, how a first-time CFO evolves as the company matures, and how FloQast's push towards an accounting transformation platform and Auditable AI is reshaping expectations for accounting teams and the modern CFO office. Razzak, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back on, Jack. Really excited to be here.
So the last time we were together, you framed your CFO job as helping the company keep going fast after, I think, FloQast's headcount had surged. What's the biggest way your leadership has maybe evolved since 2022?
Well, I think the leadership style has stayed a lot the same. What's been different is what's been asked of finance leaders since 2022, and me especially. Just with all of the AI opportunity, noise, distraction, uncertainty in the world, most of the companies are asking their finance teams and finance leaders to kind of help sort through the noise to get to the meat or the opportunity of what it can provide. And so I think that's not just a question of internally within finance how to use it, but for the whole company. And I'd say that's what a lot of teams are struggling with. Some are having great success using AI, and some are kind of still at the beginning of their journey. But I think most teams are evaluating that in some way over the last 3 years.
I know this is hard to sometimes answer. I always like to figure out, how do you spend your days differently? And maybe back then, think about 3 years ago, the size of the company it was. AI was really, I think ChatGPT was just, being born or something.
I think that as teams mature, and I don't know if this is unique to myself, 22 through 25, but I think as teams mature and as leaders mature within a specific company, you start unwrapping more and more opportunities and more cross-functional projects. You initially knock out all the things that are directly in your control to fix in the first year. It's the low-hanging fruit. You go fast. They're the easiest problems to solve. And as you've been around for a while, you start uncovering those more difficult problems, those problems that can't be solved by one or two teams, those problems that require multiple teams working together, willing to change some processes for a greater good for the overall company. And so I find a lot more of my time now focused on those really, really hard, complicated problems as opposed to the low-hanging fruit.
I mentioned up front some of your past finance career chapters. Building teams. I mean, you've used that phrase several times now. Where did you gain that experience? And maybe FloQast is really where you took the master class. Don't know.
Yeah, I think it depends who's listening to this really. Like if it's someone who's early in their career and still in IC, gaining any type of leadership experience, whether it's project based or managing a contract or even just managing a process, can be really helpful to eventually scale into a people manager. For those people who have been people managers, there's no better training than actually getting that experience. And for me, it really came to a head in one role where I had hired a couple great people, and we had one person that wasn't great. I saw the rest of the team always covering for that person. I so respected the team that was going above and beyond their jobs to do more to make sure the whole company was successful. And it really inspired me to make sure that every single person on the team is that type of attitude and that type of culture and personality. Because people love working with other people that care about the same things they do and care about putting out great product.
Last time we spoke, you emphasized that universal data access, used that phrase, and removing friction so people stop defaulting to their gut. How has your philosophy sort of evolved there? And it involved metrics and transparency. How has that evolved as the org got so much larger?
Yeah, so we're lucky right now in that as a private company, we can still be extremely transparent with everyone in the company. I want for those people at public companies, and I've been at public companies before, certainly some data becomes very restricted around before until after earnings around the company. It's going to be more complicated, but as a private company, that's really been huge for our success. And, initially it's kind of getting the data into one spot so everybody can see it. Then it's teaching people how to get that data and use it for decision making. And now I'm really excited about our BI team because they're onto the third leg of that, which is using that data not just for insight, but actual automation of processes, whether that is traditional process automation or using that data to train and leverage our AI to better automate things. That's kind of the third step for us. And that's what we've been focusing on a lot over the last year. I want to focus on for the year going forward.
Along the way, you've held board and audit committee roles alongside the CFO job. How does the governance perspective today influence how you think about risk and controls at FloQast?
It's critical. And I think it's critical for all finance teams. I just, anecdotally, like anybody who's ever gotten a data set that was automated and they pick of the 5,000 rows, they pick 5 to check. And if one of them's wrong and they can't really audit the rest of it, now you got to double check every single row in it and you don't trust it. And so for us, especially with us embracing more and more AI automation within FloQast, it's really important that it is extremely auditable, reliable, and predictable. I always use this one example of why is it so hard to use AI in finance, and it's because it's a different user. If you think about go-to-market, there is a very not a super technical skill set for go-to-market people, but they also don't have the extreme accuracy requirements for their automations as finance might. And so if that email is written 95% accurate in that pipeline generation email, that's probably just fine, right? Additionally, there's a whole lot of extra things you can do that were not done before. It might not have made ROI sense for you to hire a sales rep to call these 10,000 very SMB or consumer customers because the ROI just wasn't there. But if AI can do it, it's incremental and it's goodness. Engineering is a little different. It's got high accuracy requirements, but also that's a very technical person. The engineers are used to writing code. And so if you take that now to finance, and it's a very unique requirement, it's got to be exactly right. It's got to be fully auditable. It's got to prove that there was, in many cases, that there was some kind of human in the loop and a different preparer and reviewer. But also that person, while they're technical, they're accounting technical, they are not coding technical. And so it's a really unique problem in finance with a really high ROI, but also very difficult to get right. And so a lot of these automations that sound great on day one, you're 1 quarter into it and realize, well, it's not as perfect as I thought. And actually it's a black box and it's not going to help me pass my audit. So I'm having to do the work anyways. And so that's something that finance leaders are struggling with, how to use AI properly.
Yeah, we do want to explore that more with you. I just want to learn a little more about FloQast and the journey it's been on. And in 2022, you talked about expanding into new geographies to reach more customers. Tell us, what did you learn about geographic expansion along the way?
I think the things we learned are the things most companies learn. It's nothing unique there, but finding the right leader for the region is really important. Finding the right balance in the region of local talent that understands how that region works, as well as a few people from the corporate culture that can also help bridge the culture between how the local culture will work, but still have some of the same core principles as the corporate culture is really important. We talk about ourselves as one big company, and I think it's somewhat homogenous across the regions, but each region has its own flavor and its own local population, both internally for employees and how customers and partners expect you to engage with them. There's been other awesome benefits too. We've expanded to Europe, to Australia, now to Asia as well. And so there's round-the-clock customer support and round-the-clock development. And that's been really critical. It's easy to set up a sales office in another country, but you've also got to figure out how you're going to support those customers. And you don't want them to have something that, hey, this thing broke, how do I fix it? And sure, you can wake up engineers here at 2 a.m. on Christmas Day or July 4th to try and fix it. But it's way better if you've got a whole team already awake and working to fix it. So those things we learned. I don't think it's revolutionary, but I think everyone learns those.
How does finance partner, as this organization gets far flung? And, is it early phone calls, depending upon what part of the world they're dealing with? I mean, have you put finance people out in other geographies, or is that something further down the line?
That's something coming up. Right now, all of our finance team is US based. It certainly helps for us to have a finance team that's geographically diverse within the US. So the California team can take some geographies and the New York people can take other geographies. Having really, really well thought out processes and guidance and trainings for all the remote regions reduces a lot of the questions and the back and forth. And so it's not just finance, but it's working closely with our sales enablement teams and our partner enablement teams to make sure that they not only understand everything, but they're really good at training all of their remote regions on the way we do things. And so we lean heavily on our enablement teams here who do a great job to ramp up regions.
Let's talk a little bit about growth now and how you view it. And, the phrase efficient growth, does that mean something particularly to FloQast, or how do you look at growth?
Yeah, I think that's a question that everyone struggles with every single, whether you're expanding internationally or you're going in new segments or not, the ratio between how much do I spend versus how much do I get. And so, every company has a unique answer to that. We have our own unique answer. We're spending very heavily on product and R&D because we want to build absolutely great products for our customers for the long term. But that's often I see that as a management test, right? So when you are going through your first pass of the budget and it's some organization says, I need this much to do this much. And if I had just a little bit more, I could do this other thing. The good management test is if that incremental thing they're not doing has a better ROI than their core business. Why didn't you prioritize that in the initial budget? And so those conversations are helpful because it really helps everybody make sure that they are investing in the highest ROI things first and the lowest ROI things last, because every company has more good ideas than they have budget to fund them. And so for us, efficient growth really means, are we doing the best thing for the customer that's going to drive the most customer value? And then how that plays out in the P&L is kind of a secondary thought, because we think if we're doing the great things for our customers and they're having much success and having great wins because of how we help them and partner with them, that will eventually make its way back to the P&L. Maybe not in 3 months, maybe not in 6 months, but certainly long term.
Last time we talked about customers, I recall you characterized gross retention as the customer happiness metric. Where have you pushed the org to continue to improve the customer experience most? I mean, is it product? I know you're going to say it's all of the above. Implementation? Is it support? But what is Razzak known for? When Razzak enters the room, he's gonna.
You're right. It's all of the above. I'd like to think we do great at all of those things. I think where we've been focusing on recently and we're focusing on going forward is really making sure customers understand they're using all the awesome AI tools that come in the FloQast package. It's very easy to start with, okay, I've got this initial workflow figured out. But where customers can get just tons of value from our product is really embracing a lot of the AI products, whether it's using our AI matching or whether it's using our AI variance product or whether it's using a lot of our more free-form workflow builder AI tools that can automate processes. These are the things that we find make our customers extremely happy. It automates a lot of what they're doing. It's auditable, so they can use it in actually business critical processes, not just in the nice to have processes, and that it's differentiated. So I think there's a lot of AI tools out there that are kind of like throwing a fancy UI around ChatGPT or Claude or something else, which is fine, right? But they all kind of feel the same. And so when you're really getting a lot of value out of the FloQast platform, you're embracing the AI tools that are specific for accountants and specifically made to automate and replace processes in an auditable way, as opposed to a nice to have thing at ChatGPT, look at this spreadsheet, tell me what you think. That's kind of nice, but that's not really going to automate any of your processes as a finance team.
Well, we do have a number of questions we want to explore with you related to AI, but I'm going to have to ask the requisite. There's been public speculation about a FloQast potentially pursuing an IPO. Should we expect you to take steps towards going public in 2026? Here we are, early January. Is this the year?
I can't answer that one, but I will tell you that, a lot of our customers are public companies and we do test a lot of our own internal product internally. So, we use a lot of public company ready processes, not just across finance, but across sales, legal, compliance, IT. And so we are very ready for that. We're definitely ahead of the curve of probably where most private companies are. And we really love being able to use our own products, be ahead of that curve. And then when customers when customers come to ask us, hey, how do you use this product, even though you're not a public company, we can still have those conversations with them and show them what we love about it.
So, like a lot of companies that are in public, you're talking about public readiness milestones, more or less. And I'm wondering, in 2026, what's the public readiness milestone? Is it the financial profile? Is it controls? Is it predictability? Where are you trying to get better?
I think we work on all of those. I'd probably say the predictability is always huge, whether you're public or not. I think public just kind of is more of a requirement, just like close automation efficiency is important for every company, but it becomes a requirement when you're public. So I'd say all of those really. There's not one that stands out more than the other because we've been working on that for a bit.
You've discussed and FloQast has launched, and I think you were just touching on this, expanded AI capabilities, including AI agents and more recent AI agent builder messaging. What's the problem you believe AI should solve first for accounting teams?
Yeah, I think there's some monthly processes for every accounting team that are extremely manual. They're not fun. If you ask anybody why they got into accounting, it's not to do reconciliations for 40 hours a week, but it's something that needs to be done. And so these AI tools that can automate your transaction matching and your reconciliations are extremely powerful. I've also used a lot of Transform to automate other small processes that are manual, repetitive, that I didn't want to do or my team didn't want to do. And so I would look for something you can build around. So one, is this an AI product that integrates with your existing tools? Is it an AI product that integrates with your existing processes and workflows? And if it integrates with those workflows and understands those workflows, is it also auditable and will it help you pass your audit? And so if it can do those three things, then you can invest your time into actually working and building that AI product to automate some of your internal processes and workflows. But if it can't do all of those things, you're going to end up spending a lot of time in something that at the end of the day, you're not going to really be able to use because it's not going to pass your audit. Or when it breaks, it's not going to be easily fixed, or it's not going to be easily maintained. There's a lot of homegrown AI stuff that's out there that's great. Sometimes that's awesome, but it reminds me of a bunch of years ago where it was like, oh, we don't need to buy SaaS software. We'll just build it ourselves. And then you realize all that entails in terms of maintaining a software. So I'd highly recommend something that's a platform, auditable, integrates with your systems, and understands your existing accounting workflows.
And again, this concept, audible AI.
Yeah.
When you talk about audible AI, what guardrails matter most? Is it data lineage, approvals, explainability?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's certainly certifications for auditable AI that are really important that you can look and make sure that your vendor's AI supports. The other piece is more generic with it. When you think about a lot of accounting processes and workflows, there's often a separate preparer and reviewer. And so segregation of duties is really important. So understanding that the person who prepares the software, prepares the process, is different than the person who checks and reviews it before it goes into the system. That gets a little more complicated when you have software doing it, right? So if the software did it and someone else reviews it, who was the preparer? So understanding who is building the software within your team, is that a different person than the person who's reviewing the output of the software on the team? So we have a lot of that. Shameless self-plug on the FloQast website will tell you all the certifications you should look for in this. But I really recommend for auditable AI software that you get those certifications, you get one that has those certifications, and that it understands the actual workflow of your team to pass your financial audit.
If you were advising a customer, what's the right, path for AI adoption? What's the path you're going to tell them to avoid? I mean, what is it that you've seen that, what is the common mistake? What's the common path that's should not be taken?
Yeah, it really very different answers for different size of companies, right? So if you were a larger enterprise company or even just a public company, you've got a lot of your processes figured out through that process of IPO. And so you're in a good spot to really embrace a lot of automation. It's finding the right platform to build around. I would caution finance leaders from going out and cherry picking 7 different small tools that do one little thing in AI automation, because you're going to run into a lot of issues there if you ever want them to talk to each other, there's no orchestration layer. They're not going to talk well. You're going to have 7 different levels of auditability, and you're not going to have a platform to people to build around. Every time you have a new problem to solve, you're going to be looking at what's a new tool, and it's going to get spaghetti AI pretty quickly. And so if that's the case, I'd really look for around 2 or 3 platforms to build. And so something that your team can say, hey, everybody, this is a new skill set. You're an accountant. The old new skill set was learning how to use Excel from calculators. The new skill set is learning how to use AI as an accountant. And invest here. We have a platform. We have a tool. You can invest your time in learning how to use it, and it's going to pay off both in your day-to-day work and your long-term career. For smaller companies, they might not have all those processes. So looking for a solution that can, one, help figure out your workflows and processes, and then easily change from, I've got this checklist of workflows, I can now look at each one, click this button, and then start using AI to automate each one of these steps in my close process. I think that's really powerful for teams that a lot of smaller teams aren't going to have like a giant company-wide 2-year digital transformation process where you've got these external consultants coming in and it's years of work. They're going to do things incrementally. And so having the right basis to do those incremental improvements can be really helpful.
Where is AI having the biggest impact on your finance organization?
Yeah, I touched a little bit on this earlier. I really love in 2 ways. There's we've got some AI that's out of the box that we use quite a bit, whether it's a reconciliations or matching software or variance software that we really, really like. And then in that same platform, we've got our workflow builder software, which allows us to take that one annoying manual process that we do, grabbing data out of 2 different systems, downloading it in Excel, transforming that data, pushing it back into the GL. And so us using some of that software to automate those really painful, very bespoke custom processes that everybody has, because very few companies have the exact same tech stack. They don't have the exact same accounting teams. They don't have the exact same processes, but they get to the same end result. That flexibility has been really powerful for us on the finance side. As a whole company, there's AI initiatives everywhere. They're helping, whether it's in go-to-market, reaching customers, go-to-market, responding and fixing customers' issues faster and more accurately in a way that's really got a lot of positive NPS from our customers, and in engineering in different ways to help them be more productive and more efficient. So it's been a little bit everywhere, and I think that's pretty exciting time right now.
Just as it relates to forecasting, just curious how, whether it's having any impact there, is it a laggard when it comes to forecasting?
Yeah, I think we haven't used it a lot internally for forecasting. We've got some really good forecasting tools that we like a lot. We've spent a lot of time building the models, and I think we have a good handle on the drivers of the business. And so the FP&A team does play around with it quite a bit. They might ask it some questions and do some scenario modeling. But that's more in the ideation phase. Anything where we're actually putting together a multi-year plan or high, mid, low scenarios, or optionality around, which new features and products to build and which geographies to go in. That's still using our primarily models that we've built. And I think it's really hard to make 20, 30, $40 million decisions on a black box in AI scenario modeling. It can be very helpful for ideation, but it's not the tool behind anything that we're doing that's the official plan or scenario.
Do you think you would tell me roughly the same thing 3 years from now?
That's a great question. I think it depends, and I'll give you my personal thought on that. I think if same problem that we see in accounting, I think if that AI can actually understand how our models are built and why we built them that way and how we think about the business, it could be very powerful to ideate and quickly run some scenarios, especially in other businesses where there's just so much transaction volume, it's really hard to parse. Ours, we have 3,000 plus customers. We've got a handle on all of them, so it's not hard to parse all that data. But when you're talking about extremely large transaction volume business, I could see that being very helpful. But again, it's got to understand how you think about your business and why you think about it that way. And then you can use it for interesting things like, well, how does it think about it? Maybe it's got some interesting insight in how to think about it. But I think mostly businesses are model things a certain way for a very good reason.
Last time we spoke, you talked about business models and how they're harder to interpret up front, and that's where finance can play a role. They can help navigate that complexity that exists up front when executing a business model. I'm wondering, how is AI likely to change the expectation of what finance should deliver there up front? Do you think it's going to change in terms of speed or precision or decision support? Yeah,
I certainly think the earlier stage you are, the more helpful it can be. When I talk to a lot of very early stage founders that don't even have a finance team, some of the AI finance and modeling and predictions are really powerful for them. They might have just learned some finance background just to have conversations with their VCs, but they might not be finance minded to begin with. And so it's extremely powerful. All of the ideation AI is very powerful, going from not from 0 to 1, but 0 to 0.8, right? They're a good starting spot. How it will help us determine more future business models is really interesting. There's a lot of potential there. Haven't seen it quite realized yet, but there's certainly potential for AI to analyze things and come up with new insights on where the real value is being received from customers and get ahead of problems like that from massive data analysis. Certainly good at highlighting things like, this is interesting, maybe you should look at this. And so that's where I think AI has been helpful on the FP&A side, a little bit of the ideation or exploration phase. It's been helpful.
We're up to what we like to refer to as our finance strategic moment. We were discussing that last time you shared one, just to flag our other episode featuring you. Took a dive into the Adobe experience, the shift there, but we're hoping for a fresh one. Anything? What would you like to share with us as a finance?
I'll share an interesting thing for me. I'm not sure if it's the strategic moment, but it's a character moment, and it kind of tells you who you are. So I was fortunate enough to be at Looker when we were doing really well and on pace to go public, and actually exited to Google, which was fantastic exit. Google was amazing, and for most people it was fantastic. For the accounting team, Google treated them very, very well, but also they knew their time was short, right? They had about a year before they would have to find a new job, likely somewhere else, maybe within Google. And so we were going through this weird limbo where the deal had not been fully approved by Europe yet, so we hadn't closed the deal. We hadn't started the integration yet. We had to operate as a separate company. But at the same time, people pretty much knew it was going to close and eventually their jobs were going away. And I'll tell you, I was so inspired by that accounting team because they still cared about their job. They still cared about what they did. They had such pride in their work as finance professionals that even though, whether they did a great job or they did a poor job that was just passable, it would have been the same over the year for them financially. They took a lot of pride in what they did, and they did absolutely excellent work, coming to work with positive attitudes every day for that limbo period and the transition period afterwards. So I think that was inspiring to me, and I hope it's inspiring to other people that we get to choose what we do. I hope we all love what we do every day and come into work, happy and taking pride in our work and wanting to do great things. And so, sometimes when you strip away some of the upside or the future potential of a certain company, you see how much people have pride just in themselves and the work they do. So that was really inspiring to me. I hope some people hear that and can think about it and say, actually, I'm pretty proud of what I do every day, and take that with them.
Now that you got some distance from your early days there, and just thinking back to your first 60 days in the CFO seat, tell us something now that you wish you knew then.
I think for me, the first 60 days in the CFO seat is very unique in the building the relationship with the board, which is something you don't get experience to when, at least not much exposure to, when you're a VP of finance until you're actually in that seat. And so I think, maybe a little bit naive, one of the things I really learned is that I was at companies before and I didn't have exposure to the board, and it was the board, and it was thought of like a hive mind and like, oh, the board says this. And the reality is, when you've got a good board, you've got a bunch of people with different experience, different insights. They generally align and agree on strategic direction, but they're not a hive mind. They don't all have the same opinion on every single topic. And so I think that's something I learned, getting in the CFO seat that I didn't really realize before, even though saying it out loud should be very obvious, but I still thought of it as the board.
See, hey, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side. I forget what you shared last time. I'm sorry to say, I can't. That's what I can't remember. Was there a personal reflection, something, an interest that you have, a pursuit from your past, an athletic challenge? Doesn't have to be. We get too many of those. But something up from the personal side of life that most people might not know about you.
Personal side of life that people might not know about me. Well, it's professional, but it's personal. I think, growing up, I had a lot of different jobs. I taught tennis. I worked in a pet store. And I think, one of the things I always go back to is those days working in a pet store, having to carry 5,000 pounds of dog food out, rotated on the shelves, then also go talk to customers that were upset about something or other. And I do think, if you get some retail experience in your life, you can always lean on that anytime you're facing some adversity, whether it's personal work or personal life or work, leaning on that adversity and be like, hey, I can kind of get through anything is really helpful. And I lean on that, even though you might call it professional experience. Like, it just taught me how to approach things with a positive attitude and a happy face, even whether I'm having a bad day or there's someone else is having a bad day and taking it out on me. It's really helped me in my life.
Can I ask, was this actually a pet store or a pet product?
It was mostly pet supply, although they sold a few things, some small birds, tarantulas, crickets, and mice. So playing with kittens is not quite the same as cleaning the tarantula cage. Those are two different things.
And Chewy's delivers now. What about a book or a resource, something that's influenced your thinking over time?
I've got some behind me. I know it's I know it's a very common and basic opinion. I do think Seven Habits is a great book. One I read recently that I really liked was by Voss on Never Split the Difference, former FBI hostage negotiator, and how do you negotiate when you have to come to an agreement, is an interesting one. And so I think there's just, I also heard a great speech at the KPMG conference from, I think her name was Molly Fletcher. She was a sports agent, really inspirational. I thought it was great talking about how when we are working with people, people are often our customers, and being able to put ourselves in their position and ask them the right questions to understand why they're behaving the way they are was really right on point for finance people that often have a business partner that they're working with, and to make sure that we're asking them the right questions to really understand their wants and needs as a business partner, I thought was right on.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. Thank you for those. Hey, we're up to our final question, Razzak. This is where we get to ask you to look forward finally. We're wondering what your priorities are for the coming 12 months as CFO of FloQast. What would those be?
You know, I think we've got some great AI products in the pipeline, which I might have or might not have plugged a whole lot of in this session. I think getting internally, continuing to use those and build those out, externally helping our customers use those to solve their problems, I think is going to be huge. We've set up some other things. International expansion continues to go. We've got our new India office that we're excited about, because now we have round-the-clock engineering and engineering support for all of our customers, whether they're in the US or Asia or Australia or Europe. And so these are some of the big priorities. The last one I'd say is that we're seeing a lot of momentum around people being excited coming into office. And so significantly upgrading all of our facilities and our in-office experience for our employees is another big piece on my to-do list for the year.
Razzak Jallow, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack. Love being on.